On a board, your goal is to get stronger. And if it's hard for you to do the whole sequence, you should do the whole sequence. Do it the hard way.
Hey y'all, welcome back to The Struggle. It is me, Ryan, your Chief Struggle Officer, back in the podcast/utility closet after a crazy week out in Squamish. I have no skin left after spending so much time on the granite out there. My computer may never recognize my fingerprint again. I just have to keep remembering my password to get into my computer. Does that happen to you? Anyway, you know you're having a good time when your computer doesn't recognize you for days after you've been climbing. And climb I did. I went 5 days on. You know, like when coaches give advice, you know, I've talked to like every coach on this show, and I don't think any of them have ever said go 5 days on. In fact, I'm pretty sure they say maybe go like 2 days on, then take a rest, then go 1 day on, then take a rest. I know the theory, but the practice was different for me out in Squamish. I went 5 days on and absolutely wrecked myself in the process, but I also had an absolutely amazing time. And I climbed for fun, I climbed for filming, I climbed with pros, I climbed with friends, and I didn't do a lot of resting. Silly Ryan, acting like a 20-year-old. So yeah, I'm paying for it now. I'm recovering, but that's okay. I got a lot of work to catch up on, and I'll do a plog episode, or maybe by the time you hear this, I'll have done a plog episode. At some point in time, I'm going to do a plog episode and really go into detail about Squamish. But man, I really had a good time. I did a couple days of bouldering. I did a day of single pitch trad climbing. I did a day of multi-pitch trad climbing. And then I did quite a bit of partying in between. And I learned a lot. I was very humbled on the Squamish granite, but also it was like a great teacher for me with movement and hip position and footwork and just trying hard in very much suboptimal conditions. And the whole thing was just a freaking blast. So I'll tell you more about that in a bit. But today we're here to talk about my training on the Kilter board predominantly, but also my off-the-wall training as it pertains to my road to V8, the big goal that I've set myself for the next year or 5 years. I don't know if Squamish is any indication. It's going to take me a little bit longer than anticipated, but that's okay because I'm having a blast on this journey. And this episode here with Kevin Cuckovich from Kilter, Coach Kevin Cuckovich from Kilter. Oh, so much good alliteration there. You guys know I'm a fan of alliteration. I digress. Kevin set up an assessment for me on my board. You all know I put a Kilter board in my basement. It's the Kilter Full Ride, which is kind of like their home wall. It's got smaller, thinner, more varied holds than the OG Kilter that you would typically come across in a gym. And for that reason, it's an incredible trainer for outdoor climbing. I've got one of those in my basement. It's, to my knowledge, the only adjustable board in this whole city that I live in. It goes from 35 degrees to 60 degrees. And Kevin put me through an assessment and handpicked a bunch of problems that might identify different weaknesses. And identify weaknesses we did. So in this episode here, he goes through not only my weaknesses, but also the things that he feels I'm doing well and maybe don't need to put a lot of time working on. And then we talk about my plan going forward. So while you are probably on a totally different road right now, maybe you're on the road to V3 or the road to V12, and obviously you are a different human being than me, I do think that you will get a lot out of this conversation with Kevin, because if nothing else, it will help you to identify ways that you can also self-assess or assess with a coach or a friend on where you're at, whether you have a Kilter or a spray wall, or you're going to the gym or climbing outside. I think a lot of what we talked about here could be then brought over to how you're training and how you're thinking about your training to ultimately get out there and do hard things. And gosh, do I like doing hard things. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad we are on this road together. Let's just jump right in right now with Coach Kevin Cuckovich. I had a blast on this assessment. I was a little nervous coming in. I think, I wasn't feeling great. As I told you, one of the kids has a cold, and school just started and things have just been nuts. And I almost postponed, but then I was like, no, because I'm never going to feel great as where I'm at in this season of life. So I went into it not feeling great, but then, had a couple handfuls of nerd gummies and we just charged.
That's the right way to do it. Life's going to come at you, so you just got to get out there and go. And that's how you get stuff done anyways. The most psyched people I know that do the most things have full-time jobs and kids and are just, climbing in their basement, actually. So you're in good company.
I do love that about having the board in the basement. I've only had it, in there for about 2 weeks now at this point in time. I've only done a few sessions, but it's already completely changed the way I'm able to train.
Yeah. I mean, just anything that gets rid of an impediment to you getting out and being active is super helpful. You live in the forest, you're going to get out and hike more. If you got a climbing wall in your basement, you're going to get more sessions in.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Well, I'm really hyped. And I was a little concerned. My kind of only concern about having it so close and accessible was that I was just going to be like overstoker and wreck myself. And fortunately, that hasn't been the case. I feel like because I'm working with you and I have the benefit of working with you, I've been putting some constraints on how many days a week and how many attempts I can get. And so the assessment was kind of like that as well, because you held me to only a few attempts per problem that you brought up. Maybe that's a good place for us to jump in, actually, is to talk a little bit about the theory or, what you had intended when you planned this assessment, because you didn't tell me anything going into it. I didn't know the problems. I didn't know really what the format was going to be or anything. I just blocked out a couple hours. And so for the listener, can you explain a bit about how and why you built the assessment this way?
The initial idea was kind of based off of what I talked about my friend Theo years ago. I talked about Theo in the last podcast with you. And he kind of had this idea of having a circuit that would continuously challenge you, but you were limited to only trying it 2 to 3 times tops, and then you have to move on. And it would become progressively harder and harder as the session went. And the way he wanted to do it was basically, that was our warm-up. We would start on a gimme, basically, then keep moving forward and forward. And until you just basically couldn't finish a problem, that was the end of your circuit, and then you start the session. When I started doing stuff with Kilter and working with Jackie, and we got the OG, that kind of just expanded. We had, initially 5,000 boulders, then 10,000 boulders, then 30,000 boulders to choose from. And this idea of a progressive circuit got bigger and bigger. And so we got to expand it to hold type and angle that wasn't quite your style, or a move you didn't like, or a setter you were bad at. And you could just start filtering in these circuits in a way that challenged you every single time differently. And then when the home board came along, and this opportunity to work with you came along, I got to refine it to, okay, let's narrow in on holds. Let's narrow in on positions, movements, feet, and then try and structure it so that initially you get a chance to do things in the best possible way with the most energy, given a constraint of, 8 boulders in an hour and a half, and then try and figure out what you're good at and what you're bad at, not just on a problem, but in your entire session.
So in terms of how you structured this, I mean, essentially, because we've never climbed together in person. You've seen some videos of me. I've sent some videos on the moon board, and you saw the kind of a early cut of me climbing with Alex Magos on the Kilter full ride. But we haven't done a lot of climbing together. And so essentially, you built this assessment to get a better sense of where my strengths and weaknesses were. And so essentially going forward, you can coach me in the best way. And I'm assuming that's when you're talking about the circuits and different styles, you threw a lot at me. There were pinches, and there were big moves, and there were small tensiony moves, and there were crimps, and you structured them there would be a hard problem, and then maybe I wouldn't say easier probably, but you would essentially switch between different styles and different grades along the way. And so give the audience an overview of what that was, because it wasn't a lot of problems. And to go back to what I said earlier, you held me to 3 attempts for each climb.
Yeah. I wanted to try and get as much information about your climbing in as few problems as possible over as many different styles and hold types as possible. So when I wanted something to focus on pinches, I tried to make sure there was a pinch crux, but not just only pinches on it. It's things I could see how you did with dead points, or how it was when you grabbed a good hold with a bad foot or a bad hold with a good foot. Like I tried to layer everything so I could see you doing it and seeing, what happens after there was a hard move for you and it impacted an easier move later, and then try and switch it up with other boulders.
Cool. And I did have some guesses at what my weaknesses were going in, but I'm curious on whether I was actually right, because sometimes, we're poor judges of our own strengths and weaknesses. So maybe we should just dive right into it, and then we can talk specifically about some of these problems as we go through. And for the listener, we did this on my Kilter full ride, my home wall in the basement, which is adjustable from 35 to 60 degrees. It's a 10 by 10, and it's just got the main line holds on right now, which is basically half the holds. And we can talk a little bit about the style of holds that are on mainline versus aux, which I haven't gotten and put on yet. But there's plenty of holds on this board already. There's 195 holds on there already, and lots of movement to be done in a 10 by 10. So let's talk this through. We kept it, first of all, for the listener, we kept it at 40 degrees for the entire assessment. We can talk about how and when we might play with the angle throughout my training journey here. But let me just kick it over to you and ask you what you thought. What were the conclusions of the assessment? And then we can dive into what this all means for my road to V8.
Initially, when we first started talking, you made it sound like you weren't necessarily good on pinches or good on slopers, and that you were more of a crimper. I would say overall, you're solid on every hold type, but your precision for grabbing certain holds, that's where it becomes harder for you. You readjust a lot, which is a thing we're going to work on because it just takes a lot of energy. So when you readjust on an edge, it's not a big deal. Like the edge can kind of hold you a little bit. Whenever you would readjust on like the slopers or the more flat guys, you kind of shuffle yourself off. Same thing with the pinches. But when you got something you clamped down on as a pinch and you didn't readjust, like you never came off those pinches. It was just more the readjust than the actual hold itself that was a problem for you. And then your hips, you have very tight hips and not a good high step. So that's going to be a thing we're going to work on.
That's interesting. I noticed that when there were a couple problems in there that just really booted me off. And I got pissed when I didn't get it in 3 tries. And first of all, to the listener, Kevin was being real mean. If I just my foot popped off weirdly on the first move, he would make me rest 3 minutes, and that counted as one of my attempts. I was trying to pull right on right away. And he's like, whoa, no, that's it. That's one of your attempts. And so we forced, what I did was we forced 3 minutes in between each attempt. So I came in pretty fresh. So even though I was psyched and I wanted to maybe rapid fire, you made me rest, which was really good, except for one of those weird fluky foot pops, and you made me stop.
That was this first or second problem. And you were not happy with that, but it was good. It worked. We did it later. It helped.
Well, and also I really this is a sidebar, but it forced me, the imposed scarcity made me really get serious about trying hard. After that early, the foot kind of lazily popped off and I wanted to pull back on and you held firm to that 3 try rule. Every try after that, I sat down and I was like, let's go. Let's lock in and, I have to try fully on every one. So it really did kind of put that flash mentality into me, which I liked, which was cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, to your earlier point about the hips, there were a couple problems that had some higher steps. And if I could go real dynamic, if I could kind of sag down and load and then pounce for the hold, I felt like I could do pretty well. But if I really needed to lock off and get a higher foot up, I'm assuming this is my hips because I would feel my butt come out from the wall. And as soon as that happened, the center of gravity shifted and I was peeling. Yeah. And so I guess that makes sense that you noticed. I hadn't identified that in my mind until you just said that right there. But that's like a hip flexibility thing, huh?
Yeah, because your pull is really good and your shoulder strength is also really good. You kind of underestimated that at the beginning, but there was a few boulders where you did a huge move and you had to catch something and keep it in, and your scap never sagged. You never had that sink down. Everything stayed tight and you didn't have to recruit and waste a lot of energy re-engaging your lats and your mid back. And that's a good sign of overall body strength. When you lose that sag, when you have everything comes out and you have to retract to actually make your lats work, that's where you lose a ton of energy. That's why like bodybuilders are really emphasizing like the deep like protraction when they are trying to do pull-ups, like all the way out and then pulling everything back down. It's a ton of energy to redo that. But you never had that. You always kept your shoulders healthy and like down, which was good.
Yeah, cool.
Your pull that was the issue, but like your hips and your readjust, like those were the main things that took you off of boulders.
The readjust, I want to talk about that for a second, because I noticed that too as I've started this board account at struggle_board for those who are listening and just want to see every climb, pretty much every climb that I'm doing. I'm just recording on my phone. It's not super high quality, but I put it up there with the angle and the grade and the name of the climb, just classic board account stuff. So I've got V2s to V6s up there because that's the range that I'm playing in right now. But anyway, as I'm editing those or posting those, I have noticed that I hit a hold and I don't know, bounce my hand on it a little bit or adjust it a little bit, or it's almost like I hit it and then I lock it down, but like the lockdown is like a second move, you know? And so I don't know if that's what you're talking about or if it's like bigger or different readjusting that has not just to do with the hand, but it's the whole body. But I have noticed that when I'm looking. And so I'm curious how you're seeing the readjusting manifesting in my climbing and my style at this point and where you want to go, like how you want to try to address that. Because it does make sense that if you're adjusting and readjusting, you're spending more time on a hold, you're also draining power at that time.
Yeah. I think the easiest way to kind of go about it at the beginning is when you're warming up. No readjusting when you're warming up. Starting is small and learning it because it's a precision thing. Like your lock is good, but maybe you just kind of shift as you go and you don't get it where you initially want it, then you have to like fiddle with it. If you take it slow, grab it right the first time and then move just slowly, you build up that familiarity with it, those positions, that precision. Same thing with when you're putting your foot on a hold. Like you put your foot on, it stays. If you're like shuffling your foot as you're moving your foot to the hold, it's going to be different. You have to readjust.
Yeah, I've heard that this concept before in conversations with, I don't know, pretty much every climbing coach I talk to has some sort of version of this one touch drill or the no readjust drill. And it's funny that I've heard it from Chris Hampton and I've heard it from Louis Parkinson and I've heard it from B. Fuller, but it isn't something that I've worked on all that much. And I guess it's because as a predominant, to this point, sport climber, there's so many moves on a route and there's a lot of resting and shaking, and it's just kind of adjusting isn't something that I think a lot of because I'm not hyper focused on maximal effort on a few moves where an adjustment would make a big difference. On a sport climb, you can, for the most part, you can kind of adjust around and shuffle and sit on your feet, and that's part of good climbing to an extent out at the Red River Gorge here. But yeah, I can see even on the few problems that you threw me on that were really, really hard for me, because we weren't projecting. This was essentially like a flash go type exercise we were doing where I had 3 attempts, but I wasn't refining moves in between. I would try from the start to the finish, and then I would rest 3 minutes and try from the start to the finish again. And so there wasn't a whole lot of opportunity for me to work on accuracy. But I think what I'm hearing you saying is that's a learned thing, so that if I practice it for a while, even when I get into trying to flash climbs, I should be more accurate with how I'm hitting these holds, or maybe develop a tolerance to hitting a hold kind of quote unquote wrong or not ideally, but just kind of making it work and not feeling like I need to adjust.
There's also other things you can kind of do with it when you're trying to do something outside and you can't readjust, it'll take you off, is I've just sat under boulders and then just reached and touched holds how I'd want them over and over again until, from the ground, I would pull on, I'd do that move and I wouldn't readjust. It's that type of stuff that kind of primes you for it too. Like it's not always something you have to do in practice on the wall to get it right initially, but there's ways you can prep yourself in the real world for it, or without doing it real slow and, hours and hours of warming up to figure it out. It's a familiarity thing, and it is muscle memory. So you can't just do it by miming the move over and over and over again.
Yeah, and one of the things that's specific to our current situation here, which is me training on my Kilter full ride in my basement, is that while there's 195 holds currently, I'm not familiar with most of them. And so sometimes I'll talk to a comp climber on the show and they'll say, oh, when we're previewing, I can walk out from isolation and take a look and I'll see a hold and I'll know exactly how I need to be able to use that hold. I'm thinking that, again, there's 195 holds right now. It'll take a while to gain familiarity across all of them. But over time, my hope is that at least the main holds, the kind of classics that are going to be appearing again and again in various problems that I'm working on, maybe I will learn that. And there is definitely like an on-site mentality to some of this, because some of these problems you gave me, I was grabbing holds for the first time, like they had never been chalked. And, damn Ian for being so good at what he does, but like everything from 15 feet away looks like it's going to be good. And then I'll hit the hold and I'll be like, oh God, that's completely flat. There's no in cut to it. And I'll just explode off of it. And that happened on one of the, I think it was bird blind was a problem that you gave me, where there's like a flat edge and I hit it and then tried to just pounce to the finish hold from that. And I just came exploding off of it because there's just nothing there. And so I really had to think on my second attempt about how can I sag underneath it and use it as a sloper and maybe do a more controlled cross. So anyway, it's fun right now because pretty much every time I grab something, there's a newness to it. But in time, I'll hopefully gain a familiarity with that and understand what works for me, what part of the hold I can grab or where my body needs to be to make it the best. And then that will, again, further help me to, I guess, mitigate, maybe not eliminate, but at least mitigate the amount of adjusting and readjusting I'm doing on each hold.
Yeah. And then you also learn how coming at a hold from a different angle can either make it way better or way worse. And then you'll anticipate that and know where you want to grab it for your body in that situation, which is something that happens outside, but not as often, because you're never really grabbing a hold on one problem from the right or from the left. They're usually just one way up the thing and you're on it.
All right, y'all, just a quick second to step away from this conversation about Kilter to talk more about Kilter. And the reason I'm doing that right now is because A, I'm friggin' hyped. And I'm sure you can tell that I'm really, really hyped on this Kilter that I've got. But also, it's because Kilter has come aboard to support me on this journey, on this road to V8. And the reason they're doing that is because they believe that they are going to help me get to my goals in a much faster way than I would have been able to do on my own. And I'm starting to believe that too. After just setting up this board in my basement and sessioning on it a handful of times, it is clear to me that this is the tool for me to take my bouldering game, my strength game, and then ultimately my sport climbing game to new heights. And I'm not just taking their word for it. I mean, I should, because they're absolute pros in the space. They've been doing this for years. They are legends at shaping holds, at building boards, the first adjustable board out on the market. And they've got these things everywhere, all around the world. The community is massive. So I could just take their word for it. But also, time and again, if you've been listening to this show, you know that the number one factor for climbers to improve as climbers, to accelerate their progression, is having access to climbing. So either you live right near a crag, or you bring climbing as close as you possibly can to you. And in my case, having a board in my basement has already changed the way that I train and I perform as a rock climber. So if you have the means to do it, and I know it's a big ticket purchase, I mean, buying a board is a big, big investment, but if you're psyched, if you have the means and you're really serious about your climbing like I have become, well, there's just no better way, in my opinion, to get better and stronger and progress faster than having one of these Kilter full rides right where you live. So Kilter is going to make it a little bit easier on you. Because they're now a partner of the show, you can use code STRUGGLE when you buy a full ride setup. So that could be the mainline holds or the aux holds or the full thing with panels and all that stuff like I got. And you can get up to $1,000 off depending on the setup that you do. So you can reach out to me if you have questions. You can reach out to Kevin or Griff or Jackie or anybody over at Kilter. They're so friendly and so helpful. They can help you to fit it in a small space like I had to do in my basement, or just answer any questions that you might have. I'll put all the details right there in the show notes. And if you end up doing it, let me know and let's get after it together. All right, y'all, just a quick second here to tell you how you can hang out with this legend, Chris Sharma, and that is on an incredible deep water soloing retreat in Mallorca with him and who else? Oh, just a guy by the name of Magnus Mitbo. What is going on here? You get to climb with these guys, hang with these guys, eat dinner with these guys. I can't even wrap my head around how cool this is. And I've talked to a bunch of climbers who have been on these retreats, and they've said it is absolute core memories, life-changing stuff. But what do you do when you're not climbing? Well, each day is capped off with a delicious, relaxed dinner prepared by a local chef and then accompanied by fantastic conversation amongst all of you new friends who are going to be hanging out in Mallorca with Chris Sharma, learning how to deep water solo, taking pictures, having conversations, asking all the questions you've ever wanted to ask of these guys. Altitude takes care of everything. The logistics are fully taken care of. All you have to do is show up with shoes and chalk and a huge smile on your face. If you want to learn more, pop over to altitudeclimbing.com/events. I'm going to put that link right down there in the show notes for you. There's only a couple spots left on this Mallorca retreat, so hit that link to learn more. Let's talk more about just what you discovered here. You threw, I think it was mostly kind of V4 to V6, if I recall correctly, with, again, a bunch of different styles. So we've identified adjusting, excessive adjusting is an area of improvement. And to do that, I'm just going to practice, as you've said, because I warm up for every session doing V1s to V3s and recording them for the board account and all that. So I can definitely, without adding any sort of additional volume or load to the climbing I'm already doing, I can just add in this exercise of not adjusting, just grabbing a hold and moving off of it. So I'll work on that. The hips, I don't know how I'm working on the hips. Maybe you can talk me through that, because that seems like an area of opportunity. And then we can talk about anything else that you saw.
There's a pretty good stretch for that called the 90-90. It's a really good start. It helps kind of just open up the hips and loosen you up a bit. Same thing is squats help a bit. If you really focus on going low, that'll do it. But mostly the 90-90 will be a part of it. I'm tweaking your program to basically exclude things that you could cut on. So going to try and have a lot more problems where if your foot picks because you didn't get over it, it's going to be a lot harder to hold the next hold. So basically just really forcing you to have to get over a bad foot or a high foot will be a big part of your circuits in the next 9-week program.
That's really mean of you to do. Let me first start by saying that. And this actually gets back into, we were doing a problem early on. It was like the last one of the warm up, or maybe the first one of the assessment, where I was able to skip a hold and just edit it out and kind of go up to the finish. And you, I think, rightfully corrected me and said, look, you can do that, but you're kind of just cheating yourself. Like, these climbs are set on a densely packed board like this in a way to force certain body positions and movements. And if you can reach through something, maybe that's the way to do it outdoors or something. If I've got a big project and I can use my length to my advantage because I'm 6 feet tall. But if I'm understanding your opinion correctly, when these climbs come up on these boards, the intention should be to hit every hold. And maybe I do it a slightly different than the first ascensionist, or I use a bump instead of alternate hands. There's no way of knowing unless I look up the original beta. But at the very least, I could try to use all the holds that are lit up. Yeah.
I think on a board, your goal is to get stronger. And if it's hard for you to do the whole sequence, you should do the whole sequence. I was climbing on my home wall a year or so ago. My buddy set something on it, and I was like, flash go, I make it to the last move. And I noticed that I could just skip this pinch and just do a big bump. And, I do that. I skip the pinch. I come out of the finish hold. He's like, why did you do that? Well, I just missed it. He's like, no, you skipped a thing I know would be a crux for you. Do it the hard way. You're not climbing stuff on a board for glory. If you want to get better for outside, it's training. If you're weightlifting, you're not putting on light weights to get numbers. You're trying to get stronger.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I love just the motto, do it the hard way, because that's what I need to do. I'm always trying to make things more efficient and more easy as a route climber and having a route climber mindset. But this is training. I'm on the road to V8. I want to climb hard things, for me, relatively speaking, outdoors. I want to climb hard things on the board as well, because it's a lot of freaking fun. And I shouldn't be looking for the easiest way to slice a climb, at least at this point. Right now, we're training. We're in a training mindset. So I won't skip the holds. I'll do it the hard way. And to your point about trying to force me to use marginal feet or feet that I have to get over, I think that's really going to be good for me. I think that one of my strengths, I don't know if you agree with this, but one of the things I've been able to rely on the boards is an ability to cut feet and hold it and reel them back in. I don't know if my contact strength has improved a lot, just like over the last year, or just my body morphology just works fine for that. But I've noticed that I'm able to do that. It also might be the fact that I've predominantly been training, my board training history has predominantly been on a moon board, and moon board problems are kind of more commonly set in a way that I will like jump to a hold and maybe not do it statically and then just like scorpion or whatever and bring my feet back in. And so what I do love about this full ride is that a lot of the movement is a lot of moves in a smaller area. So it's not about just like making a big jump. That's maybe a big differentiator for those who are listening who haven't been on this, who have only been on like a Kilter OG at the gym. I think the Kilter OG, this is a gross generalization, but there are many climbs on that. And you see a lot of videos of people making these big moves to cut feet, to like these big kind of swinging Gastons. And it's like kind of jug to jug. Whereas the Kilter full ride is totally different. It's all these little edges and pinches and crimps, and it's requires far more tension and far more kind of static climbing than I was accustomed to, like even on the moon board. Anyway, it's a long-winded way of saying that it's probably good to find climbs where if my feet pick, I come off, because I've been able to rely on just hanging on. And that's fun to do sometimes. I'm sure some of them will still have that. But I do like the idea of really trying to keep the feet on, keep that control, keep that tension, because that's also going to translate to when I climb outdoors and when I climb on sport as well. It's just the more I can run through my toes, the better. And I think I might be a little sloppy there, climbing mostly at the Red River Gorge. And if I was a granite climber, I'd probably have way better footwork and be much more over my toes. But I can kind of get away with a little bit of lazier footwork out here at the Red. And it's nice that you'll be able to force me to do that.
For you, we're just going to find decent feet that are higher. Like I put you on one thing, Mr. Raindrops, and you were really opposed to using the high foot for the move.
It was so high though.
Yeah. It was relatively okay. But you also have a tendency to not like to climb square, which is really interesting because like it's both like you have a lot of power in your shoulders and your arms in like the square kind of box, but you don't like your hips square. You like your hips like backstepped and flagged, but you never really wanted to have just like a frog, like the British frog with the knee down, locking off. Like you really fought that. So that's going to be kind of a fun one to kind of try and sprinkle in as well.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you noticed that. I've recognized that too. And again, maybe it's just because sport climbing, twisty climbing is very efficient and you're keeping your hips to the wall and you're able to reach a little bit further. And so I'm very uncomfortable climbing squared up. I could do one or two moves, but then I'm always looking to kind of like twist in and make a hold more positive or just get my hips into the wall there. And that's fun. I'm learning how to do that well on the Kilter board.
Yeah.
But that also, I think, indicates to your point that there's this hip mobility issue where it's harder for me to frog square on a wall. It's more comfortable for me to twist in. So I guess I got to be doing my pancakes or frog stretches or, I don't know, somehow open those hips up sooner than later if I can.
We'll do the 90-90. It's interesting but your torso, your upper body, your thoracic mobility, it's all really good for that square. It's like you get in these positions where you want to twist your upper body, but you want to keep your legs square, but you got to have them both, work together. You'll kind of do this thing where you are like your upper half is fighting your lower half depending on the move.
Yeah, that's interesting that's something that's stood out to you. What else jumped out and by the way, I'm going to get revenge on that problem. Mr. Raindrops, I'm coming for you, Mr. Raindrops.
It's on the list.
What else jumped out? And if nothing else in particular jumped out, we can talk about kind of where we go from here.
you were really uncomfortable starting problems with just one foot. You would sometimes put yourself in this like really spread eagle situation with your legs to try and start a problem with just like a useless right foot when you could have just like used the one good left foot. That was interesting a couple of times. I mean, that was maybe the thing that did stand out the most was you just did not want to toe down up high. Like you a few times you turned like a good down pulling foot into a bad smeary side pull press. It was more little situations that you made less efficient for the whole process than anything. Because like I said, like your shoulders and like your ability to keep tension and maintain good scapular activation and like actually use your body if you did lose your feet, that was really good.
Yeah, I do. To the point about wanting to find a second foot, that's funny that you noticed that too, especially because the way my board is built, the low starts can be pretty low for me because there's no kickboard. And that's why I'm able to get to 35 degrees. So even at 4 degrees where we were, the board is only a couple inches up off the ground. And then as we get up to 50 degrees, then there's a much easier low start setup because I've got a foot and a half of kind of quote unquote air kickboard underneath it. But getting into some of those real low starts were hard. And maybe they felt very hard to me, but maybe they would have been easier if I had just been okay with using one foot instead of two. But again, I think that kind of gets back to my sport climbing default of wanting stability. And I just constantly want 2 feet on. I want to make a stable triangle here where I can rest or chalk or clip. Whereas bouldering, I think, is more commonly defined by being able to move through unstable positions pretty quickly. Yeah. And that'll be something I'll be excited to work on because that's a mental barrier where there's just a discomfort that I feel. And so even starting a problem with 1 foot on instead of 2 just feels wrong to me. I'm just like, where's this other foot? Oh, it's 8 feet to my right. I guess I need to do the splits.
Well, it's like a friend of mine always just says like front load the difficulty. If it's going to be a little bit harder to have, one move up front be like just really low percentage and bad, and it's the second move, but it makes the third, fourth, and fifth move easier, take that, get it out of the way. And same thing, like if you have to start with 1 foot, but it makes you get like that second hand way better, but it's a slightly harder pull off the ground, just kind of bite the bullet and just get on there quickly, get moving, and then save some energy instead of losing it later.
That's cool. That's a great thing for me to keep in mind. And a lot of these problems on the full ride are hard right off the deck. And it's because I've only got 10 feet of climbing, which is plenty. Some of these problems have 6 moves in that 10 feet because you're moving around so much. But some of them are really hard. You just have to slap and really, dig deep to get that first move established. So that's something that I'm excited to work on. And again, we're training me to be a boulderer here. And that's going to take some unlearning from my sport climbing side.
I mean, there is a lot of sport climbing tactics that transfer to bouldering and vice versa. But I think the biggest thing, at least when I try to do sport climbing, the not thinking about what happens when you make a move, like that is so much more valuable from sport climbing than for bouldering. Like the mentality of like, okay, like you're thinking about nothing. At least as a boulderer, when I'm on a rope, I'm like, oh, I'm attached to something and I have to do this from the beginning. When you're in good sport climbing mode, you're just thinking about the move. And that's, keep that, hold on to that for your bouldering.
What about my finger strength? We, love as climbers, we love to always just kind of say, oh, I need to get stronger for this. And oftentimes what we're talking about is finger strength. We're not saying, oh, I need stronger scapular strength. We just kind of default back to, I need to be able to hang another 10 pounds. Was there anything evident from the problems you gave? And again, they were off of pinches, crimps, jugs, slopers, threw a bunch at me. Any sense for where I fall in that department?
Your hand strength's good. It's hard to really tell some of it because you have a tendency to drop your pinky and still be in like sport climbing mode of almost just drag the hold. And there weren't a ton of things that had just like a tiny, tiny crimp that you were going to have to own and move off of to really gauge like how comfortable you are with small holds. Like Mr. Raindrops, the crux of it with the smallest hold was up high, and your foot issue got in the way of you getting there. But like your hand strength's good. It's just going to get better on the board. We put more and more things at you that you basically can't just drag your way out of.
I definitely default to the drag. When you were talking about earlier, oh, am I a sloper or a pincher or a crimper? I'm like, I'm none of the above. I'm a dragger. I'll just, if given the opportunity, I'll 3-finger drag a 10 mil edge. So it will be good for us to do that. And I think ultimately when I upgrade to the aux holds, you were saying a lot of those had some heinous little edges on them. So that could be a way we ratchet things up in some months in the future.
There's a few things I have in mind for the mainline sets to get you on that have very specific uses for holds. Like you're not going to be able to drag some of these pinches or edges. Like the way you come at them, you have to pinch, you have to actually get on the hold. If you drag, you'll come off. Basically going to force you to, accept that your pinky needs to stay on. And that'll be a good way to kind of overall test your finger strength. But that's almost a comfort thing than a strength issue.
Oh man, I'm excited for you to throw this stuff. So good segue. We're going to talk about the plan forward. It sounds like after the assessment, you were rethinking a little bit about my off the wall training as well as the on the wall training. So talk to me about, I'm about to head off to Squamish, but then when I get back, we'll be like fully in on board training season. So what's it going to look like for me, and how do you divide up these training blocks, if you will?
Initially, I was going to have you do more of power protocol for your pulls and just weighted pull-ups, kind of go back to those time drop-offs. But your snap was good. And then when we had, noticed the foot thing, I figured it'd be better to just get a little more lock, get you more comfortable with being up high to then try to help you get over your feet in those scenarios. So we're going to go to weighted pull-ups, but we're going to have them be in two specific kind of scenarios. One, like slightly higher volume, higher intensity, where you are being able to get a good range of motion in when you're doing the reps, but not having be easy. And then your second day will be just full try hard pull, 2 reps, 5-minute rest, 5 sets, like just 90% when we're at max, go for it. Your pulls, and then just good stabilizer, shoulder health stuff. Going to do more for your posterior delt and then the serratus, just to kind of help that scapular stability up high, which is still pretty good. So it might not, more of just a prevention thing. And then because of the wall adjust, gonna alternate angles. So day 1 will be 40, day 2 will be 45 or 50. Really try and dig in onto problems that you have to get over that foot for.
Sick.
And the main base of it will basically be a 2 on deload, then a deload week, and then kind of back and forth. So your weights and your climbing will be kind of hard for 2 weeks, and then mostly skill for the climbing for like the 3rd week, and then like lighter weight to just not detrain you. And then, keep doing that for 9 weeks total. You'll take a little bit of a break. We'll go at some potential 8s and then come at it slightly differently after that.
I just saw my life flash before my eyes, and I'm on the other side. I'm a monster. I'm just ripping holds off the wall. So then is it 2 board climbing days and 2 conditioning days a week?
Yep. Ideally, we'll try and get it so that you can do your climbing, have a bit of a break, and then do conditioning later. We'll come up with scenarios that if maybe you can't do them on the same day, you at least get a good break in between like your conditioning and then your next climbing. But, we always want to do climbing before the weights, before the hangboard, like skills before power, before strength. There's a pretty good guide to what should be done first, second, third a day.
Yeah, and so because I have the board at home, which is just such a massive convenience, I could get the kids off to school, get a nice warm up, do a hard board session, and then do a conditioning workout in the evening, after the kids go to bed or before dinner or something, so I'm getting 6 or 7 hours off between that climbing session and the board, and then probably get a couple days off. Or I'm still obviously wanting to go to the red. I'm still training up a bit of endurance. And where would I fit that in? That would be day 2.
That'd be on like the weekend for, post the session. So we're going to tone down the weights so the majority of your efforts and like the difficulty will be in the climbing. This is a skill sport, so we want 60+% of your training week to be climbing. And then weights are going to be much less than they were before you got the board. Now you have the board, we can mostly focus on climbing. Weights to kind of boost the work you're doing on the wall. Then the weekend comes, you can get on ropes. Preferably, you try to stick to some shorter, more bouldery routes, just so you're not throwing a whole bunch of variables at your body that's trying to like get you stronger, up your power, and then also up your endurance at the same time. Like you throw too many things at you're in your training cycle at once, you're going to water all of it down.
Just let's say I'm climbing on a Saturday or something. On Monday, I would do a board session in the morning, conditioning in the evening. I would rest on Tuesday. I could do another session on Wednesday, or maybe rest on Wednesday as well. Do day 2 on Thursday, then take off Friday and go climb on Saturday. So basically 1 or 2 days off between our board / conditioning days.
Yeah, ideally, 36 hours to 48 hours. So, you finish your session on a Monday, next session could be on a Wednesday or a Thursday for the training stuff. If you did want to do, day 1, Monday, rest Tuesday, you could do a light session, something different Wednesday, and then just try not to dig yourself into a hole for like a Thursday session. But you would ideally, basically day on, day off, 2 days of rest or a day of rest, then get into ropes or get into going outside. Do you want to give yourself as much of a chance to be as fresh as possible for the training?
And then how will the training look? Will it look a lot like the assessment? I'm talking about on the Kilter board training. Am I identifying some V7 or V8 projects and working on those over the course of weeks, or am I still trying to do quick ascents of things that are more in that V4 to V6 range?
It's going to be similar in you're limited to tries. You're going to have more boulders in a session. You're going to have harder boulders, but then much easier boulders. So you'll still kind of have that cycle where you get like a couple of easy things in, put you on a slightly easier boulder that has a weakness for you to kind of work on it, and then a much harder boulder that's just kind of a general thing, like a try hard, get psyched, take you back down. It kind of will cycle up in that, but it'll gradually, maybe not that gradual, but each week you're going to see more and more hard boulders and like fewer of the easier boulders, and harder boulders are going to start to have those weaknesses in them. So like initially you'll start with, kind of low 5s, high 5s on the things that are hard for you. And then like 6s are going to be more well-rounded. By week 2, 6s are going to have your weaknesses. 7s are going to be in there, and they're going to be more well-rounded.
Good. Mr. Raindrops will be coming back on my spreadsheet here.
Well, I've got some harder ones than that.
Well, yeah, bring it. And then it'll still be max 3 attempts and then 3 minutes rest in between?
Yep.
Okay. And with the 3 attempts, if I send it on the first, then I move on to the next problem. I don't put in 3 attempts, like I'm not repeating, right? So so the max attempts per problem will be 3. The minimum will be 1. And is it 10 problems in a session or thereabouts?
Yeah. Yeah. So you saw 8 for the assessment. There'll be 10 in a session. When we start adding like the 8s, they'll drop down to 9 problems in a session. But the idea is that you are going to do some things first go, and then other things you're not going to do at all. Like, so we want to kind of get that whole gambit of like you succeeding and then you having to try real hard.
Now, if there's a problem where the crux is near the top and I give it a go and I come off of it and it's pretty exhausting getting up there, should I implement projecting tactics and say, oh, let me sort out this move up here before my next effort? Or how do you look at projecting as part of this? Or is every attempt a flash go essentially?
Every attempt should be a flash go. Like if you fall off near the top and you think maybe it was a foot pick, maybe you thought it was funky, analyze the problem. Don't try the move over and over again. You're just going to waste your time. Like the whole goal of this part of the goal is to expose you to a ton of variety of movements in a session. That's almost the main reason of the 3 tries is even if you have 3 good goes, you don't do something, you're going to go again. You're going to save energy instead of trying the same problem 6 times. You only try it 3. You get to try a whole different problem with a whole set of movements that you weren't going to try because you got sucked into the zone of trying to get just a little bit further and further each time.
Yeah, I could definitely get sucked into that. Again, I like the artificial constraint of saying you get 3. And so I just try my best, do my 3, and then move on to a totally different problem that will, hopefully develop a totally different skill or shore up a weakness for me. Okay, cool. Yeah. So I'm off to Squamish. I'll get back. I'll take a look at the spreadsheet and we'll dive in. Is there anything else I should be thinking about? I guess we talked a little bit about flexibility or mobility. So you'll be working that into my off-the-wall training program?
Yep. I'll send you a little thing to show you the 90-90 stretch. It's a good way to start. And then we'll kind of take it from there. It's also good. You do family stretching at night. It'll be a great thing to do with the kids.
Yeah. Put a little TV on and do some stretching. That's usually pretty easy for me to work in, or I do a lot of conference calls and that, so I can just be like trying to focus on some stretching. I mean, I think genetically my inner hip mobility is not one of my genetic strengths. We will not be turning me into Margot Hayes or Alex Magos over the course of the next few months here, but maybe a little will go a long way as it pertains to some of these problems that you're going to be throwing at me.
Yeah. I mean, you just need like a half inch more of flexibility to get onto some of those feet that you did not want to like toe down on.
All right, man. Well, anything else before we wrap this up? Anything else that I should keep in mind for this next block of training?
Lots of protein before, good diet, good sleep. I think we'll kind of just throw this at you and you come up with questions after. I don't want to like give too much away, but I do need to make it a bit harder than I had initially planned.
Well, I'll take that as a compliment, and you should take it as a compliment as well, because while we were waiting for the board and the materials and the build and all of that, you've been working me pretty hard on the conditioning and like those timed pull-ups, speed pulls and all that. I could definitely feel that translating to like hitting a hold and just sticking it and then moving to the next one and just having that recruitment all the way there. So yeah, I appreciate all of the preparation that's gone into this, and I'm excited for what's to come. So I guess as a final parting thought here, we're doing all of this, because it's fun, and I'm just having a blast on the board as well as connecting with the Kilter community out there. So just in and of itself, it's super enjoyable. But also the main goal here, the goal is to climb a V8 outdoors. And I'm about to head to Squamish. I will not be trying any V8s out there. But any advice for me as I head out to Squamish, a variety of problems I should be looking at or trying? And then, of course, when I get back, it's still very hot here in Kentucky, but we'll probably want to talk about me taking a trip down to Chattanooga to start scoping some things out as well.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't been to Squamish in a few years, but it's just so fun. I just start at one end of the boulder field and then just walk through it with a pad, and whatever looks good, try it. Like, you'll have a blast.
The main purpose of this trip is to just have fun and create some content. I'm filming with a couple athletes out there. I am going to meet up with Drew Ruana and do a session with him out in the boulders, and hopefully I'll be able to absorb some Ruana magic through osmosis. And then I am going to get a session A couple sessions, actually. So I'm going to probably do like 2 or 3 days of bouldering and then a couple on rope. I'm going to do a multi-pitch day and a single pitch day. So it'll mostly be a lot about fun. And I may not return with any skin. I'll let you know. So it'll depend on how quickly I can get back on the board once I get back. I think I'm going to go pretty hard out here for the next week.
Good. Yeah. I mean, you'll have a blast. But, don't shy away from any 8s or 7s or anything. If you see something that looks good, just try it.
That's terrifying to me, but okay, I will. Well, especially when I go out with Drew, because I think we're gonna do a thing where he's gonna try to turn like a V5 into a V10 by making it an eliminate. So maybe I'll mess around with some modifications that he makes to that. And for those who are listening, if you've got a Kilter full ride, a home wall, or if you've got one nearby, a friend's or at a gym, let's session. Or if you're in the Louisville area, hit me up. I think I have the only adjustable board in all of Louisville. Both gyms have fixed boards, and I don't know of anybody. Maybe there's one out there, but I don't know of it. So anyway, come on by. Climb at 60, climb at 35. I'm going to be having some fun. Oh, that's one last question I've got for you. Is that, I guess right now we're not projecting on the Kilter board, right? So one of my thoughts was, I can't do Mr. Raindrops at 40. Can I knock it down to 35 and try and learn it? Or is that cheating?
No, you can definitely do that. That's one of the tactics Kyle, he would do with his projects, is start at 35 and switch it to 40. I've seen your videos of you at 50 and 60 or 50, and you are much better with your feet and towing down on stuff when it's steeper. So I'd be wondering if Mr. Raindrops gets harder for you at it. So we'll see.
Dude, that may be the case, honestly. It's like the more vert or the more slabby something is, the more out of my comfort zone I've become, because I've just become so accustomed to steep stuff out here at the Red. So yeah, maybe that's what's going wrong. Maybe what I need to do is kick Mr. Raindrops up to 50, send it there, and then try to send it at 45.
Just take it with the exact opposite of everyone else's progression. Oh yeah. Man.
Yeah, exactly.
It's too hard at 40, you do it 60.
Well, when I climbed with Magos, he was saying that sometimes for him as well, when it gets steeper, he can just campus or kind of spring to a hold and use the momentum. Whereas when it's a little bit more vert, you just have to be more on it with the footwork and all of that. It's good that you're not letting me climb everything at 50 right now. I think 50 is my favorite angle on the board so far, but it's probably better for me to work on more technical climbs or more footwork demanding climbs at 40 or even 35. So yeah. All right. Well, you keep me honest. I'll try not to cheat along the way here on this road to V8.
Once we get you to chat, if you get to Chattanooga, you're definitely going to have to up your footwork. There's some good ones out there.
Keep preparing me, my man. I appreciate it. And I'll see you when I'm back from Squamish.
Yeah. Have fun out there.
All right, there we have it. It is time for me to dig deep. It's time for me to get to work, not only on my Kilter board, but also off the wall, stretching, working on the mental game of not adjusting or not needing to adjust on the hold so much. And then, of course, so much in between. But I am having a freaking blast. And if you want to watch my journey on this, I'm trying not to spray about it too much on my struggle Instagram. So I've started a board account, and that's just at struggle_board. And you can pop over there on Instagram. That's where I'm posting all of the problems that I'm doing, from V0 up to V, however high I am at this point in time. I mean, at the time of recording this, I've done V6s, but I'm pretty close on a V7. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The grades don't really matter that much, aside from just marking a little bit of variety, challenge, and progression. But you can see all of that over on the Struggle Board account on Instagram, and occasionally on the regular Struggle Instagram if there's something I'm really excited about or proud of. And if you are a Kilterer, I would love for you to share some of your favorite problems with me. Remember, I climb on the full ride, which is like also known as the home wall. I've got the main line set right now. I haven't added the aux, but there's like 30,000 problems that I could do right now with the main line set. So I think I'm good for a little while with the whole setup that I have. So anyway, if you climb on one of those boards, if you have one at home or you go to a gym that has one, and you've got some really fun problems, I've already heard from a handful of you about this already. So thank you. Please sending them my way. Let's just jam. Let's try to get stronger and have more fun and work on different movement on our Kilter boards. And if you want to get one of these boards, look, I know it's a big ticket purchase. It's like a huge ticket purchase. But in many conversations that I've had with so many coaches over the years, not affiliated with any sort of actual like board company, the number one difference maker in someone's ability to progress as a climber is having access to amazing training tools, especially climbing tools like a board in your home if you can. If you're lucky enough to have one like down the road at the gym, great, you don't have to buy one. But, either you live close to a crag or you bring climbing close to you. So if you're in a position and you're like, ooh, I'm thinking about pulling the trigger on a board, do some research. Feel free to talk to me and many others. And I really think the Kilter Full Ride is just a fantastic board. I've tried pretty much every board out there, I think, to my knowledge. And this was the one for me. So yeah, if you want to do that, there's a link in the show notes where you can get a cool discount because Kilter is now a partner of the show, which I really appreciate. It's cool. It's making all of this possible for me as well on this old man's journey to V8. So thank you for being on this road with me. And now I guess I'll just get back to work. Quick shout out to Glenn Walker, who edits these episodes. Shout out to the sponsors of The Struggle. If you want to learn more about them, you can swing over to thestruggleclimbingshow.com/deals. And also a big shout out to the Honnold Foundation, who makes this a carbon neutral podcast. They're doing incredible work out there. They just announced their latest round of grantees, and you can learn more over at honnoldfoundation.org. And also, lastly, a shout out to you who are listening right now. If you are a Patreon member, then you are directly helping me to keep the lights on over here in the podcast/utility closet, which I really appreciate. But even if you're not a Patreon member, just listening is really awesome and helpful and appreciated. And if you share the show with some friends, or you can pop over to Apple or Spotify to rate or review it, that's a super easy, no-cost way to support me so I can keep doing this thing, which I really love doing. And it's a lot of work. And so any support you can throw my way is super, super appreciated. Okay, that's enough from me here. I really hope that you are having an awesome day and that your training and your climbing are going great. And if you are struggling like me, well, just remember the struggle makes us stronger.